All right, sorry about that. So security. Security. Let's define security first. And this is from Wikipedia. In fact, why don't we just pull it up here? Pull up. Use Google Chrome in this case here. Get that link here. Computer security, or cybersecurity, or information technology security is the protection of a computer system, networks, or networks from theft or damage of their hardware, software, electronic data, as well as the disruption or misdirection of services that they provide. And then it talks about here different areas where security is implemented: Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and then one thing that we don't think about is smart devices, such as tablets, or people have these days smart refrigerators and smart washers and dryers and smart light bulbs. Those also are important things. In fact, one of my customers, Mr. King, sent me an article about a light bulb that had a flaw in it. And this flaw, what it would do is allow an attacker to connect to the light bulb, and the light bulb could essentially relay information or allow the person onto the network through a light bulb. And obviously this was patched, but that's something to keep in mind if we're going to keep developing smart houses with everything being computerized and connected through the internet. There's a lot of security, or there's a lot of benefits to things like this, but there's also security concerns that we got to work out or make sure that we understand. Another thing that has happened is with these smart speakers such as Google and Alexa, bad guys have actually used that to be able to get into people's houses that have a smart lock, for example. They might be able to record a sound bit or find sound bits of you on the internet. And then once they find sound bits of you, they can construct an audio profile. It's not that particularly difficult to do. And then record something along the lines of, Alexa, unlock my door. And so then what they do is they take it with a speaker, and it's kind of loud. They hold it up to your window and they play that. If the Alexa device is in the living room or not too far away, they actually can get into people's houses, and there's no sign of forced entry or anything like that. So things like this we got to keep in mind when we're living our modern day lives. Some of the key types of malware and stuff that we're going to be dealing with. Well, let's have the screen up, and forgive me. Like I said, this is first time for me. I should have switched this screen here. So let's go ahead and go to this box right here. Hello. All right. So what we were just talking about was that information security thing right here. And so we need to talk about the different categories of areas where there could be threats involved. Let me pull this down here. We got viruses and malware. That's kind of the main classification for everything. I kind of throw it all into the term malware. You might have heard that term used because people will often call me and say, I'm getting lots of pop-ups on my computer for different advertisements, so I think I have a virus. Well, you don't have a virus. You have some kind of malware, but it's not a virus. Viruses attack your computer, destroy things, corrupt files, make Windows not boot. They don't generate pop-ups on your computer, but there's a similarity between them, so I understand why people are calling them viruses. When they say virus, they mean the computer is doing unwanted things, and since it's doing unwanted things that the user themselves hasn't set up or told the computer to do, it must be a virus. But the different areas, the different classifications, we got adware, which should be pretty obvious. That's what generates the advertisements. This is perhaps one of the most frequent ones because people won't go and do something about it because all it's doing is generating advertisements. Some people might think that it's actually part of the computer system or the website that they're looking at, and it's not doing a significant harm to the computer. It can slow down your computer, but it's not making things impossible to do. But adware, so that's one of them. Spyware. Spyware is information that records information on you. Keylogger is a kind of very scary and serious form of spyware. The Keylogger, what it does is it records all the strokes you press on your keyboard. So if somebody puts that on your computer and you type in your credit card information into a website, Now the bad guy has that information. So it's recording all of your keystrokes, including the backspaces and stuff like that. So if you mistype a password, they can see backspace, like 2 backspaces were pressed, and then you continue typing your password. So that's what a keylogger is. And the same thing, obviously, if they get into, if you log into a website, now they have your username and password to get into your website as well. And so that's a keylogger form of spyware. Obviously, other things that spyware does, ironically and kind of hysterically, is similar to what legitimate websites do, where they track you all around the place, all over the internet. I had a customer tell me the other day that they searched for a particular kind of boots, right? They typed in Google, and then they go to Facebook, poof, there's advertisements of that boot there. And they go, whatever website they go to that has advertisements on it, this boot keeps showing up all over the place. So that's kind of like spyware, right? The website's tracking you from place to place, spying on you, watching what you're doing. And, got these little creepy guys that are peeking up around the corner, seeing what you're doing everywhere you go. And we'll talk about some browsers that I like that kind of combat that. And there are some large companies that do this, and that's how they collect their money, is by spying on you and then reporting your information. While we're on the topic, before I forget, because we'll be all over the place, one thing that's good to do, and perhaps we'll have a class on this, but perhaps at some point, if you, whether you think you use Google stuff or not, you should see if you have a Google sign-in, a Google account, and then you can check the kinds of things. Let's see here. My Google information. Just do a quick search here and see where we would want to go. I think it's right here. myaccount.google.com. So sign into this, and then over here, data and personalization, security, these things right here, go to that account and click on that. You might be quite alarmed with how much information is being recorded there. This isn't particularly in the category of the viruses and stuff that we're talking about, but you can see, I've shown this to a few people, and it's like on January 16th of 2017, you were at this place. How do you know that? Because your smartphone is recording everywhere you're going and is keeping track of all of that stuff. So yeah, that's a good thing, a little side thing to throw in there that's kind of significant, might come into play one of these days. But let's continue down the list here. So we have spyware. Viruses, like I said, they kind of tend to destroy things. They're original. They're the OG for this kind of stuff. And they typically will cause corruption. Your computer won't boot. Programs won't work properly. Worms. So this is a good one to talk about. Many people are under the false impression that viruses just hop from computer to computer, like very much like we're all locked in the house right now because of the coronavirus, the COVID-19. That's the time of this being recorded. And the reason that I decided to create these classes is to give somebody, or some of us, something to do, since we're sitting at home and can't really go out, can't go to work, can't do the stuff that we normally do. So take the time to learn, right? So most people think that viruses self-replicate all throughout the internet. Again, I say viruses, I mean malware. But they don't, except for this common, or the uncommon subset called worms. It was around 99, 2000, maybe 2002 or something like that, where we had a really big one called MS Blaster, I believe it was. Let's just double check. Yeah, there it is. MS Blaster, computer worm. This one was quite the infamous one. It actually did self-replicate from computer to computer. It took advantage of an exploit, or a piece of bad code in Windows XP that allowed the software to self-replicate, not even within just networks, but actually externally on the internet as well. Around this time, 2000, high-speed internet is still a pretty new thing at that time, and so all of the security measures and lockdowns and things like that we've learned over time weren't really in place. You connect your computer and you're good to go. You tell somebody, do you have a firewall? And they'd look at you like, my wall's not on fire, so I guess not. So this MS Blaster, went and replicated and spread itself throughout much of the internet. it was set to deliver its payload something like 6 months in advance or in the future. So it was able to spread and infect all these computers, but it wasn't doing anything just yet. It was just taking this opportunity to spread. Going back to the COVID-19 that we're dealing with right now, it's that period of what do they call it, where you have you're asymptomatic, so you could be spreading the virus even though you don't feel sick or anything. Well, that's what this MS Blaster thing was doing. It was written by a kid, if I remember correctly. We're not going to read through the article. Actually, here it is. There you go. So yeah, he was a kid arrested for the creation of the MS Blaster worm. So like I said, it was spreading from computer to computer automatically. Then it delivered its payload 6 months later. The payload, if I remember correctly, it wasn't anything significant. All it did is essentially load, and it had a list of, let's say, 10 websites, 10 major websites. It loaded those websites over and over again, or perhaps it pinged it. A ping is when you send out a piece of information and then it bounces back to you. So ping google.com. Right here. So I'm pinging Google. My computer's sending out some packet saying, "Hey Google, are you there?" Google replies, "Yep, I'm here." And this repeats over and over again. My phone, remember I talked about things listening to you? It just lit up while because I said that phrase. So we sent 4 things saying, "Google, are you there?" It replied back 4 different times, and then it tells us how long it took. This ping right here took up some resources on Google. So it could have been pinging the server or just loading the web pages over and over again. It did this to Microsoft and Hotmail, which was Microsoft's mail service, which is now Outlook.com. It did it to, I believe, Amazon, and I can't remember, but it was a few of the major websites. Well, the end result of this is much of the internet came to a crawl because suddenly the traffic jumped up several thousand%, and the routers couldn't handle all the traffic. The websites themselves obviously went down, and it was just an entire mess. I think it took at least a week, almost 2 weeks, to really clean everything up. And the way that they cleaned it up was the ISPs, the internet service providers, Comcast, AT&T, etc. They blocked the traffic from. They set up essentially a firewall at Comcast, for example, that said, "Do not allow this information through." Now, here's the thing about this. Microsoft knew about this and solved this 6 months ago, 6 months before the payload was delivered, but nobody did the updates. And so I understand the complaints about updates today. Windows 10 Windows 10 has had a bad time with updates here recently, where they've released an update that broke things, and then they released an update to fix the update that broke things, which itself also needed an update to fix the update that fixed the update. But the reason why Windows 10 kind of forces the updates on you, in my opinion, is because it's like, look, if we give you the option to update at your convenience whenever you can suffer some downtime if something goes wrong, you're not going to do it. So we're just going to do it for you because we can't have that kind of situation. If the internet goes down today, you're talking about losses of hundreds of billions of dollars, perhaps daily. I mean, I don't know what the number would actually be, but you're huge losses, right? And inconvenience, and perhaps even people dying, because today the internet is critically important to us to get things done. So they force these updates on you these days, and one of the major reasons is because of worms. Trojans. We'll just pull up something here that's nice and pretty for you guys to look at. Computer Trojans. I'm a little bit scary typing this in here to see what comes up, and we'll go to images over here. So a Trojan is a virus that what it does is you install Nick's computer program, right? The PC Computer Guy appointment application, and inside of that PC Computer Guy appointment application, there's some bad code that's in there that's kind of hiding amongst all of the good code. And it just like a worm, it might sit there for a while and kind of be silent, and then surprise, jumps out and does its attack. So that's what a Trojan is. Very similar, if you guys don't know the history. I can't remember in details, but I think it was back in history, somebody built a giant horse and put a bunch of soldiers inside of it, put it inside of a city that was walled up that you couldn't get past. It was quite the epic wall, and so the soldiers were inside, then they all jumped out and massacred people of the city. Historians, please forgive me. Keyloggers, we talked about keyloggers. Rootkits are particularly nasty. So on our computers, we have different levels of functionality. So the top, the user, and then under that you have the operating system, and the operating system is doing its stuff. And then you have the firmware or drivers are kind of what translates between a printer doing a physical action of printing a certain letter and your computer software. So you have the software here, you have the hardware over here, and then in between you have the firmware that handles the communication translation back and forth. Well, beneath all of this stuff, you have some very, very basic things. We have something called the BIOS, for example, basic input output system, I believe. And the BIOS is kind of like the starter for your car. When you turn on your computer and you see that Dell or HP logo right when you first turn it on, it says, you're the hard drive and here's how you function. You're the RAM and here's how you function. Because when you turn this stuff off, it doesn't know what it is anymore. So that's what the BIOS. Well, anyways, a rootkit will hide in an area beneath or before Windows and an area that's not accessible to Windows. So this rootkit exists in an area that Windows itself, you have your Windows operating system right here, you have the hard drive right here. Well, right in between this little tiny area, there was something left over from computers a really long time ago, a certain amount of bits that were left there, but they had no purpose anymore. And unfortunately, some of these hackers are quite clever, and so they created virus essentially that hides in that spot. And so when the virus is in there, Windows usually can't find it. You can't clean it up. I had one computer in the 15 years that I've been doing this. They had a bona fide Trojan that I wiped everything on the computer. I formatted the hard drive. There was no information left. It was completely wiped clean. And the virus came back. I reloaded Windows. It was still there. Did this a couple times. It was pretty impressive, right? So to get rid of that, you had to have some low-level formatting software that wrote zeros across the whole thing. But that's what a rootkit is, and you definitely don't want to get one of them because they're basically, they're not impossible to clean up, but they're extremely difficult to both spot and clean up. Excuse me. Then we got phishing and spear phishing. This is more along the scam stuff. We'll kind of get into that a little bit. Bots or bot networks. This is a common thing for spamming. To send out spam to people. IP addresses get blocked by ISPs where they notice large amounts of traffic going through them that are sending emails. Well, your computer, you might be complaining about spam and junk mail, right? Well, you could be the cause of the spam that's going on in the world. If your computer has been infected with a botnet that is sending out spam, you're part of the problem. And so a bot or a botnet, so the bot is a singular thing, the botnet is the collection of things together, are these virtual networks, these virtual armies, where if hackers infect your computer, you infect 1,000 computers with a botnet network with a bot, each of them is part of the botnet, then the hacker can issue commands that all of these computers that are part of it start doing. So whether it's take down Microsoft and ping the hell out of Microsoft and load Microsoft until their website goes down, or send out spam mail. Everybody's contributing and sending out the spam mail. So these are when your computer gets turned into a zombie, it's a bot, part of the bot network. These are things that can be done with that. Ransomware is fortunately something that is becoming much less frequent today. The ransomware was a huge problem 2 years ago. I had a couple customers that were actually attacked with ransomware, and what it did is it went through and it encrypted their hard drive. And when you encrypt a hard drive, the encryption technology is so strong today, it's basically all but impossible for you to get your information back. And I hope one of my buddies is watching this. He mentioned it a couple times. I hope that never mind. Anyways, so the ransomware goes through and encrypts everything on your computer, and now you have no way to get it back unless you pay the bad guys. And when you paid the bad guys, sometimes you got the decryption key, and sometimes you didn't. Sometimes they would turn around and say, "Hey, give me more money before I release the key." So it was a horrible, terrible thing. Schools got hit with it. Large institutions got hit with it. And here's the thing: there were a lot of these protections that were there available beforehand, but people were just too cheap to deploy the simple things that they need to do to prevent this from happening. In many situations, as long as you had a simple antivirus, you were good to go. But I've seen myself personally, places that won't spend a dime on an antivirus, right? And it actually works well for me. If you don't put an antivirus and a good antivirus on your computer, then you're going to be calling me more frequently. But if you follow my advice and you load a good antivirus on your computer, the odds are you're not going to have anything significant happen. Well, like I said, there's even on large levels, schools that would have 1,000 computers and none of them had any kind of internet security software, antivirus software. And so this ransomware would spread throughout the network and just create nightmares for people. So you probably have heard about it in the news. It's died down quite a bit. A few new versions are coming up these days, but it's not as big of a problem as it used to be. And another way that you combat this is by having backups, right? We'll talk about stuff like that throughout the course here. And DNS hijacking. So the DNS server is a critical part of going to the internet and getting things done. Let's take a look here back at the screen. Let me get this guy up here. So I'm going to load up my window here, and I'm going to say ping, we already did it, but ping google.com. And we'll stop it here. This guy right here, this number that got spit out back to us when I said ping Google, computers don't use names like we do. The names exist so that you or I or Tom or Bill can access and surf around the internet. But computers don't know names. Computers are mathematical machines that work in zeros and ones. And so everything that exists on the internet has an address, sometimes multiple addresses. In this case, Google is this IP address, just in my specific case here. And so the DNS server is that which translates the numbers to names and back and forth. If I do /all here, ipconfig/all. By the way, if you're watching this and you want to follow along, I should go back here a little bit. Click start, and this is the start. Mind blown how I often say click start and people say I don't know where that is. But the start button is here, the same place that it's been since 1995 or earlier than that. It just looks a little bit different, but here's your start menu, and then you type CMD, Charlie Mary Delta, and you hit OK. You get your command prompt here, and in here you can issue a bunch of commands. This is still very useful. It exists today. I use it on a daily basis. Ping Google, or we're going to do another command, ipconfig/all. So ipconfig/all spits out tons and tons of information here, right? This is all the different networking components that we have on our computer. Some of them aren't even used. Some of them are used sometimes. So we're looking for my network information. This is the one that I'm currently using. And so, it gives me my IP address of my computer, the subnet that I'm on, and then right here at gateway, this is your router, incidentally. It's the gateway to the internet. And then we'll get DNS servers, right? And so these ones are what are called IPv6 addresses. It's the future of IP addresses, but we're not quite there yet. And this is my IPv4, Internet Protocol version 4 DNS server, which incidentally, if you notice, is the same as the router. Your router is doing a whole lot of stuff. So it acts as a gateway and as a DNS server for most people. And then I have another DNS server here. This is a secure DNS server that Firefox has partnered with, I forget their name. They're pretty large on the internet. But so that your DNS requests are all encrypted. Well, so the DNS server is what converts those names to numbers and numbers to names. So when I say ping google.com, it's going to the DNS server and saying, hey, what is Google? The DNS server saying this is Google. Remember I told you these numbers right here? My phone woke up again. Are Google. If I open another tab here and I paste that address, I copied the wrong one. Let's go back in here and copy the correct one. Highlight this here, and right click, that copies it. So if I take these numbers here and I paste them, look what comes up. We get Google. So Google is an IP address just like everything is. Well, a DNS hijack, getting back to security, is something where they take the names and they reroute you somewhere else. So when you say go to google.com, instead of getting Google, the DNS server, the virus will actually have its own DNS server. And so it says, instead of telling them what Google's real address is, give them another address here. Let's do an example of that. Let's see. Get my server's IP address here. And you know, we're not going to do this. That'll take too much time. But I could set up something pretty easy that we could do to redirect that information. Sometimes it's actually useful to hard code DNS information in. But anyways, that's what a DNS hijack is. And then the fake tech support. That's the last of the categories here. Fake tech support is a huge thing. You'll get a thing on your computer. In fact, I have an image here. There's a Windows class. Pull up our class over here, and an example of a scam here. Not this one, the fake tech support scam. There we go. So we've got the fake tech support scam. You probably, almost everybody has seen a window like this. Warning, your computer's going to blow up. We see this error message. You need to deal with this right now. Otherwise, your computer's going to blow up, and everything around you is going to burn, and everybody around you is going to die if you don't call this phone number right now. This right here is a fake tech support scam. First, people don't deal with these pop-up windows anymore. The pop-up window that says OK, any legitimate website does not use that. This was you know, year 2000 kind of stuff. And in terms of web programmers know today, don't do these because they're often blocked by web browsers. It's not a reliable way to disseminate information. So if you get a pop-up like this, odds are it's probably not legitimate as it is. This big giant scary message here and the people pretending to be Microsoft, they're not Microsoft. If you call, you'll get somebody usually with an Indian accent, and they'll pretend legitimate. They'll try to earn your trust, and once you give them access to your computer, they can really cause a lot of damage. Sometimes people get out of it without having damage caused, but these people, once they have access to your computer, they can encrypt your profile, they can destroy your data, they can delete things, they can copy and steal information without you even knowing that they're copying the information. So do not let people into your computer that you don't know who it is. And the reason why I say it in a broad term like that is because it's hard for you to know whether it's a legitimate tech or an illegitimate tech, because it is useful. We use remote access all the time, so we want to be able to remote into your computer. If it genuinely is Microsoft or Apple or whomever, you want those guys to be able to remote into your computer and help. The difficulty is, how do you know whether they are the real tech support or not, right? And so what I tell people to do is first Google, you know, put in the phone number. So let's just take this guy here, excuse me, and slap this over on this side, slap this over on this side, and now that we've got these things up, well, my phone number is too small here. Zoom in. Don't know what the zoom in command is, but we'll try that. Hey, it worked. Control plus and control minus usually gets you to zoom in and zoom out of things. 1-855-405-7100. And let's see what we pull up here. Make sure I typed in the right amount of digits. 1-845. Yeah. And see if we find anything. Call apps. This doesn't look like it has anything. A lot of this looks like spam stuff. But our first tip is, you notice we have a whole bunch of Chinese characters here. So that's a pretty big tip that it's not a legitimate thing. We'll go to the next page over here. This right here pretty much tells us that it's a scam phone number. If it's a bigger used number that has been around for longer, you'll get reports where people saying, don't call this, it's a scam. So anyways, you can put in the phone number, you take that and plug it into your browser. You might say, I can't do anything. My computer's completely locked up and I don't have another computer. So what am I supposed to do at that point if I don't have another computer? Well, almost all of us have smartphones. If not, call somebody. Call your son or your daughter or whatever and have them look up the number for you. Other things, if we look at this here, the text, do not ignore this critical alert. That's kind of a big sign. If you close down the page, if you close this page, your computer access will be disabled to prevent further damage to our network. The reason why they don't want you to close it is because they know if you do close it, it won't come back. Their scam is done. It's over. I get calls like this 2-3 times a week, and I just tell them, shut off your computer, turn it back on. That's the easiest way. Actually, if you really know what you're doing, if you do Control-Delete and bring up the task manager, and then you just end task on this window. So I'll do it here. If I hit Control-Delete, I don't know if you guys can see that or not, and I'll choose the task manager here. I have the task manager up. Now this isn't in the actual window, but let's say we'll go to Google Chrome and we'll pretend that this is the thing. And so we got Google Chrome here. If I click on this and end task, now it's gone, right? This is just a picture. So I close the web browser itself, but now that stuff is gone. And if I come back over here, relaunch it, now you see it's not back, it's gone. And so they know that if you do that, if you close the message, it's going to be gone. So pay attention to what they say. Look for things that are really trying to push you into calling tech support or calling the phone number. One of the jokes that I say is to people, they're like, hey, I get this thing that's saying that I have to call Microsoft right now or my computer's going to blow up. Like it's hard enough to get a hold of some tech support from a lot of these companies as it is, right? You call, you sit on the phone for 45 minutes, and you might get somebody that might know what they're actually doing. If it's that hard to get a hold of them in the first place, they're not going to be going out of their way to get you to call them. So that's one of the big things. That's the big one of these last couple years, is these fake tech support scams. And so what the purpose is they get in your computer, they pretend like they're checking things out, and they tell you, oh my goodness, your computer's really messed up. For $300, for $500, for $1,000, we can fix this for you. If people pay them, a lot of the times what is happening is they'll go in and they'll load a few, like a free web AVG antivirus and things like that, and they'll kind of sort of maybe do a little bit of cleanup, but really you've just paid $500 to have somebody scam you. So don't do that. Don't let the fake tech support scam. Is on our site, if you are interested, pccomputerguy.com. We have these tech tips over here, and the video section, if we go just straight into the videos here, we have a couple times when I have time, almost never, I'll record these scammers, and I don't believe it's this far back. We gotta be where we call and pretend. We'll just search up here. Fake tech support scam. All right, so yeah, here I'll just play a moment of it. I call and pretend like I don't know what I'm
doing. Hi, Nick Ellis with PC Computer Guy.
So loud.
Going on today is the fake tech support scam.
And we'll just jump forward here.
Like we fix the computer. So FIXME, fix me.
And so this right here is me doing the phone call, pretending like I don't know what's going on. If you spend 1 hour per year learning this, studying on the new scams and what's going on, just 1 hour per year, odds are you're not going to get scammed. You're going to save yourself hundreds or thousands of dollars in your bank account, and the pain and misery that comes from going through this stuff as well. It really doesn't require that much time. So check out fake tech support scams like on our site. They're kind of entertaining sometimes too. This computer here that the guys remoted into is a brand new computer. The computer has existed on the internet for 5 minutes by the time that I called him. And so I could do just like they're doing. You pull up some command, you type some crazy things in. One of the commands that they like to do a lot is they'll type a tree here, and it's like I forget what it is to make it keep scrolling, but it'll scroll through. Let's see here, tree, and let's see if we can make it display the name instead. Yeah, I can't remember what the path is, but it'll scroll through really fast and it'll look like it's really scary, and then at the end they'll type a message saying your computer has been infected. Another good source here, while we're on it, if you want to be entertained with this stuff at the same time, go to YouTube, and I can't remember exactly what his name is, but Scam the Scammers. This guy right here, Kit Boga, and what he does is he calls the scammers and pretends like I did, but he does it in a much more entertaining way. Pretends to be an old lady or whatever, and wastes a lot of their time. So if they're talking to him, they can't be scamming other people. So he's doing a community service and helping people out because he's taking up some of their time, but they're also interesting and kind of fun. So the reason why I point that out is because that's the biggest scam, is the fake tech support scam going on today. All right, so we've covered pretty much all the scams that are going around these days. Next, we're going to talk about things that you can do to stop it, and some of the software that we could use as well to stop it. But before doing that, we're going to take a short break here. I'm going to get something to drink, and then we'll be right back. I hope you guys are enjoying this, and if you are, like I said, drop me a line, drop me a message. If you have any questions for anything we've talked about so far, I'll be able to check those messages right now. And if you're watching this at a later date, if you want to join the live classes, join the live classes as well. Like I said, we're doing this as a free thing. One, because I like to teach people. I don't believe in hoarding the information. And two, we have a lot of extra time on our hands since we're sitting at home. A lot of us with cabin fever during the coronavirus lockdown. They don't want to call it a lockdown. I forget what they call it. Stay at home order. So might as well use this to do something useful. So like I said, I'll be back in 5 minutes, and I hope to hear from some people when I get back. Thanks. All right. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Nick Ellis, the PC Computer Guy here in Indianapolis, www.pccomputerguy.com. You also can find us on Facebook, PC Computer Guy on Facebook. You can check out our YouTube channel, which is PC Computer Guy Indie, INDY, PC Computer Guy Indie. You can find us there. You can find us on Twitter, PC_computer_guy. We also have a Telegram channel that I set up not too long ago. It'd be great to see people on there. A lot of people don't know what Telegram is. It's like a chat room kind of thing. It's a secure chat room. That's one of the main reasons that we use it. And you can find that at you can find the link on our site if you go to pccomputerguy.com and then click on any page on the right hand side. It says get in touch and has all of our information, including our Telegram channel. So you can download Telegram, and if you have questions with things, we'll be happy to answer them in that Telegram channel. We hope to grow that to a community of people, and maybe there might be 2, 3, 4 tech people that are kind of sitting out in there as well. So if you just have a question, you can hop on the channel and get your stuff answered. And yeah, we just like helping people out. So we're going to get back into it. Another 30 seconds or so. We'll be right back. And the last things that we're going to be talking about is things that you can do to prevent all the bad stuff that goes on the interwebs. So be right back in about 30 seconds. All right, I had a coughing fit going on there, so forgive me for that. All right, so we've talked about the stuff, what all of the bad things are, what many of the bad things are, and the reason why we spent quite a bit of time on that is knowing it is half the battle, right? G.I. Joe. Well, anyways, knowing about all of these different things and what they are and how they function is just, it helps you to spot them, identify them. Also helps you so that, if you think something's going wrong on your computer and you call us, and instead of saying, I have a virus, you might say, I have some adware going on my computer. And knowing that what the differences are allows you to pick the right tools also to take care of it. So how can we prevent this stuff? How can we make our lives better? Education. Education is the most important thing. So I got 4 bullet points here. In fact, why don't we, number 1 on the list is education. All right. Number 2 on the list is education. Number 3 on the list, can you take a guess? Education. Knowing about this goes a long, long way. It's funny, it's something that my pop said many, many years ago before he passed away. He said, make something idiot-proof, and they'll just make a better idiot. And so education is the antidote for that. So by you guys being here and taking the time to learn this, you very well could have been a victim of fake tech support scam where they got into your computer, then they encrypt all of your files and hold you at ransom, and then you either have to choose whether you pay these bad guys and hope you get your information back or just not at all. So you might have saved yourself from that. So and I hope that would have never have happened, but if it is, consider this free class having saved you $500 just right off that bat. So let's see, the antivirus. Obviously, that's the first thing that we'll start with. Having a good antivirus on your computer is critically important. Like I said earlier, it kind of blows my mind how people are really unwilling to spend something on the order of between $30 and $50 per year to protect your computer. These companies that create the antivirus, that are constantly looking for the viruses out there and adding those definitions. That's what the updates are when the antivirus downloads updates. It's saying, okay, we found and learned all these new things and incorporated it into our program here. It just blows my mind why you would not have something like that on your computer, even if it's a free one. Now, the paid ones are typically better than the free ones, but at least have something. We recommend Norton. And I personally, I get no kickbacks. We have no partnership set up with Norton. But the reason why we would recommend it, we look at three different things. One, how effective is it? Norton is not the single most effective. There's a couple that are more effective. I'll take an example here. I think Norton was ranked, last time I read, something around 97% of things. Another one called Kaspersky was ranked at about 98.5 or something. This is from 2 years ago. So it had 1.5 percentage points more than Norton in terms of its catch rate. However, remember I said there's 3 categories, and that was category number 1. Category number 2 is how efficient is it? How much stress, how much resources does it take from your computer? Every antivirus is going to slow down your computer some, because it's got to sit there and check all the information to make sure the files that you're using, the websites that you're loading are safe. So it's going to slow down your computer some. So how efficient is it? Right. So that's number 2. Number 3 is ease of use. So Kaspersky is a more powerful antivirus, but it is substantially more difficult to use than Norton. Norton is generally set it and forget it, right? You install the software, you're done, you walk away, you have a nice day. For me, that 1.5 percentage points for the average person, if you don't know how to answer the questions properly in Kaspersky, you're actually going to be worse off than in terms of your protection than if you just use Norton. And then going back to the ease of use, Norton is incredibly easy to use. Going back to, we have the effectiveness, the ease of use, and the resources that it puts on your computer. So the resources aspect of it. So a lot of people, anytime I say that, they'll say, I heard Norton was terrible. Why would you be telling me Norton? You must be a crazy computer guy that doesn't know what you're talking about. Pre-2009, it's true. Norton was a terrible antivirus. Not because it did a bad job in its catch rate, but because it was bloated. It would slow down your computer way too much for what the antivirus should be doing. Say Norton, making up these numbers, would slow down your computer 15 to 20% versus another antivirus that had the same catch rate but only put a 5% strain on your computer. So pre-2009 that was true. Post-2009 they scrapped everything. They started from scratch. And I remember the first few versions, they had 2 graphs up. This is what your computer resources are being used, and this is what Norton is using, kind of to sit there and really press upon you. Look, we started over. It is efficient now, and it was, and it still is very efficient. And if you have Comcast, you can get Norton for free, so that's always a benefit. If you don't have Comcast, I definitely think that it's worth buying. This is not an antivirus review segment here, but so I'll just throw out the other one really quick. Is Windows Defender, built into Windows 10. So this is a free one, Windows Defender. It's built into Windows 10. You don't have to do anything. If you don't have an antivirus, Windows Defender is likely going to be there and take care of things. And I've read reports that Windows Defender is just as good as any of the paid antiviruses out there. Now, I don't have 15 years of history to vouch for that, but a lot of reputable sources are saying that that's the case. So if that is the case, free is the right price, right? So let's do this here. We're gonna just click start here. And by the way, I hit the Windows key, little random tip on your keyboard. That's how I always get to it, because I use this quite a bit. And if you learn how to use it, it becomes quite the efficient tool. And so here's a little side thing, right? Instead of looking for things in your computer, instead of having to run all over the place and I don't know where this is, I don't know where that is, and people will do that, especially when you upgrade to a new operating system. Tell people with Windows 10, you just click start, and then there's no search box here. Notice there's no search box. You just start typing. So I'm going to type Defender, and you see right here when I type, I have the word defend in here, and we got Windows Defender. I honestly don't know where this is filed. If I drill through the start menu and look around, I can't tell you where it is because I've never needed to do that. I just click start and I type what I want. The same thing for any of your programs. This also will help you with settings. If you wanted to change your desktop background or defrag your computer, which incidentally don't defrag. For the majority of the population in today's era, defrag does more harm than it does good. It's not always the case, but most people probably don't need to defrag. Side thing there. Anyways, back to this Windows Defender here, and we can see on this computer I have some things turned off myself, but you would want everything turned on. So you could set up whatever this is complaining about right here. Threats are all current. This is all good to go. Ransomware protection. So this is something that I'm going to ignore. Ransomware, I told you, is the one that encrypts your files. Well, I have backup through a company called Backblaze. And I also have a local backup with Acronis right here, Acronis True Image. So I don't need to have OneDrive set up for that. We can say dismiss this here, and then that gets rid of that. But that's how you get to Windows Defender, and then you can make sure everything's running well here. Let me pull up my list here, and the only one that I recommend people don't use is Mcafee. Now, that's been my personal experience. Mcafee has done an awful job. True story, I had one guy that refused to get rid of it. It was like it was his baby. He would not get rid of it no matter what happened. So every month to every 2 months, he would call me back out to his house again to clean off some more infections from his computer. And every time I would tell him, dude, switch to Norton. And he would refuse. And so another 2 months would go by, and this probably happened 3 or 4 different times until he finally switched to Norton. And then he no longer called me. He didn't need the problem stopped. I don't know why the psychological thing happens where when people buy something, it becomes part of them. But I don't have loyalty to Norton. In a year from now, I might say Norton is complete garbage and use something else instead. But yeah, so in my personal opinion, anything except Mcafee. And a lot of people have Mcafee because they have lots of deals where they push it out on computers. Dell will pay, or Mcafee will pay Dell $5 per computer that they send out with Mcafee, knowing that you're probably going to click on it and subscribe to Mcafee since it's already what's on there. A firewall. So let's talk briefly about what a firewall is. We have both hardware and software firewalls. A firewall is something, let's see if we can pull up a graphic here. We'll go to my Chrome here. There we go. This is a good representation of it. So a firewall is something that stands between, make sure I have it so that you guys can see it, and that's being covered here. Yeah, there we go. So a firewall is something that stands between you or your computer and the internet. WAN, wide area network, is what that stands for. LAN, local area network. So your house network and the internet. And the firewall stands between the two of them. You have software firewalls and hardware firewalls. Software firewall is like your antivirus. So if I click start here and type firewall, there it is. Our firewall, Windows Defender firewall, and I have servers set up. So this again isn't going to be your normal settings, but you'll have your firewalls here. You want to make sure that they're all set up and working properly. That's if you have the Windows Defender firewall. If you have Norton or whatever, it's going to have its own firewall in there. If you've ever connected to a network with Windows, you notice how it asks you. You'll get the thing on the right hand side over here saying, do you want to share files and allow computers around to be able to see? Let's see here. Do you want to allow files Windows 10? Yeah, you'll get this kind of pop-up right here. Do you want to allow files? And you'll say yes or no, or if you don't answer, it defaults to no, I'm pretty sure. What this is doing is it's setting your firewall based off of your answer for that. So if you're on a home network, then you don't need to be as strict, but if you're at Starbucks, then you need to lock down your firewall substantially. But if you're at home, you might actually want to share files or send media to your TV from your computer or something like that. I do that a lot. But back over here, so a firewall is something that blocks the communication back and forth or monitors what's going back and forth. When you pull up a website, if we pull up this guy's video here, what's happening is this computer is saying, I want YouTube. So it's going out to the internet, and what it's actually doing is your computer asks the gateway, your router. It says, hey, router, I want YouTube. The router says, okay, hold on a second. Let me go get it. Goes and connects to the server that has YouTube. The information comes in, the YouTube server replies, and then your firewall says, all right, who wanted YouTube? This guy did. And so it sends YouTube to this computer. So this computer technically doesn't exist on the internet. That's why it has a private IP address. It's one of the functions of a router. So your computer's getting YouTube from the router's just grabbing YouTube from the internet. So you see how that communication works. This guy gets to check everything that's going back and forth through there to make sure nothing suspicious is going on. We have something called ports. You have IP addresses and then ports as well. So each computer or each IP address will have 65,000, actually 65,535, I can't remember the exact number of ports available. We'll pull this up here just so that you can see common ports. Something maybe with a little bit less information on there. So here is showing some common ports that might exist. Let's see what you might... SMTP, sending mail, simple mail transfer protocol, is often, or defaults on 25. DNS, remember we talked about domain translations where it translates the names to numbers. It works off of port 53. Your websites, the HTTP one here, you see it works off of 80. And so forth and so on. So what this is you only have one IP address, but that one IP address can serve a ton of different services, right? You look at web pages, that's one service. You might be streaming this video, that's another service. It's the way that video is transferred is different than the way web pages are viewed. So all of these different services, they require a chat program. If you're using Skype might use a different port number here. So all of these different services exist so that you can have one IP address that can do many different functions. And so the firewall, what it's doing is it's checking those ports and seeing what information is coming in and out based off those ports. And it has ports that are open and ports that are closed. So if we go back over here to our common ports, we see FTP is on port 20 and 21. Well, the router, it's going to block anything coming from the internet that's port 20 or 21, unless you explicitly tell the router, yes, allow that information through, or you first make an outgoing request. So your computer has to send out and say, hey, I want FTP information. Then your router will temporarily open it to allow that information to come through. But in general, if anything unsolicited comes and hits your firewall, the information is not going to make it to any of these computers because it's checking those ports and saying, hey, there's no reason that I'm going to let this information through. Remember I told you I have servers, a bunch of servers set up. So in my list here, in my router, I actually have a whole bunch of ports configured. Allow website traffic to come through from the internet so that I can serve a web page or whatever. So that's the purpose of a firewall. Now, almost everybody actually has a firewall already. If you have a router, you have a firewall. You have a hardware firewall. Now, it's kind of a limited firewall. There's way more in-depth firewalls, but you have a basic firewall that exists for any router that you have. The software firewalls in your computer, they allow more control over the packets coming in and out of the computer. And so you can say on the computer, you could say allow Skype to do anything regardless of whatever port is being used, whereas you can't do that with a hardware firewall. So anyways, there's firewalls here, so we got that topic covered. So having an antivirus, having firewall in place and functioning. Firewalls, this has helped people, incidentally, a little side thing that I've gotten calls where it's like, hey, something keeps popping up on my computer saying I've blocked, I being whatever program, have blocked the sending of information to this website. Well, that's a clue right there that even though the software didn't pick up the virus or whatever sending that information, it's saying this is a suspicious website and I have this listed as a suspicious website. Why is your computer trying to talk to it? Do you really want to allow this to go through or do you want to block it? That's the function of a firewall. Let's see here. Malwarebytes. So we talked about having an antivirus and we talked about having a firewall. Malwarebytes is another great utility. We'll pull up the website here. Malwarebytes.org, I believe is it malwarebytes.com. Malwarebytes is where we go. It's what I call my cleanup hitter. So they do have a paid version that does real-time monitoring. Real-time monitoring means that it's constantly watching the things on your computer. However, I like to use the free version. I like to use Norton as my lead off hitter, and I use Malwarebytes as my cleanup hitter. So what I mean by that is no antivirus catches 100% of everything. So since Norton's going to miss some things, Malwarebytes can go through afterwards and clean the stuff that that Norton has missed. Norton and most antiviruses, incidentally, aren't super aggressive because that can create problems as well. So Malwarebytes will typically catch a lot of things that your normal antivirus has missed, but this is okay because Norton is going to block, or your first firewall, your first antivirus is going to block the really bad things, and this will catch the questionable things. So I like to use this as my cleanup hitter. And so when you're using the two of them in combination, right, you got something that's 97% effective, and then you have something else that is 99% effective, and when you use them both together, you're using 99.999% effectiveness, right? So I just like the free version of this. It does an excellent job. A side note, if you install it, it'll be down here in the lower right hand corner next to your clock. I right click on it and I say don't start with Windows, because I only want to scan with it once a month, maybe once every couple months. You don't need to scan with it on a daily basis. That's excessive and can kind of hurt your computer. So I don't want it to start up automatically because I don't want it to spam me with advertisements and things like that. So Malwarebytes. So we've got your antivirus in place. We've got your firewall in place. We've got a great cleanup hitter in place. And lastly, only you get things from sites that you trust. So when you're downloading things on the internet, we'll go to Google here and we'll do a search. Free games. Don't just download games from any random site. Make sure that you trust and know the source of the game. So if it's, you see, using Google search, this piece of information right here, to me, is more important than the actual thing right here. This is telling you top free games from Microsoft, but you know what? Anybody can put whatever they want in there for this to say. Web developers have access to program this information into Google, but this information right here can't be manipulated. So you right here, it could, right here where it says games.com, they could say Microsoft Games here, but it's not really Microsoft Games. Like I said, they could put whatever they want, but they can't lie about this part. And people rarely pay attention to this, but this is where it's actually coming. If I click on this link, I am going to be heading here. So make sure, you know, AARP. I've never downloaded any AARP games, but you can probably trust that AARP is not going to be sending you to bad things. So know where you're downloading things from. Download only trusted things. If you're not sure, I got that question the other day. Well, how do I know that this is a legitimate or a not legitimate thing? If you don't recognize the name, then you can do a Google search. I've never heard of B Games here, right? So I'm going to go up here and say, is B Games malware? I don't know. Or is B Games a good site? And here we go. What's the best online gaming sites? NY Mag, New York Mag. Okay, that's a big one. Reddit's a good place to get a lot of information from. So you can read about whatever site from these things. Just make sure you know what you're downloading in your computer. Remember I told you viruses don't jump from computer to computer, with the exception of worms, and those are almost non-existent. There are very few of them. So just know what you're downloading, because that's the big mistake. And that's where I go back to education. If you get a virus, if you get ransomware, if you get malware in your computer, it was you. I will get customers all the time that say, I didn't do anything. Okay. It doesn't change the fact that we need to clean it up, and we're going to have to clean it up the same way. And I can tell you that it didn't jump into your computer, but I don't need to argue with you about it. But you need to make sure that you're downloading what you intend on downloading. Another thing is, when you download product A, there'll be like a little sleight of hand thing that goes on where they try to slip in this other product, and people just click next, never reading what is on the screen. I'm not talking about reading the 50-page legalese thing, but let's say Java download a checkbox. let's pull up an image here. Java include junk. Forget what the search. Yeah, here we go. Let's see, where is it? So here, you go to download Java, and in the process of downloading Java, you just clicked next through every single box that came up. Well, there's this thing right here. We recommend that you install the Ask Toolbar, and this is a checkbox that's checked right here. Install the Ask Toolbar and make it my search provider. You clicked next, and you never paid attention to this, and then I get a call saying I didn't do anything, but my search engine has changed and my browser has changed. Well, that's what you did. You missed it there. All right, we're going through things quickly because I know we've been on here for a while. People want to go and do other things. Let's see here. Make sure what you know what you're downloading from, and you know we're going to stop that for today. And if we want to do part 2 on security and scams, we could cover a lot more information on part 2. I just wanted to make sure I provided a good hour of content to everybody here. I've got quite a bit more notes to talk about. In those notes, we've got spotting unusual emails, more in detail about the Google URL, and how to search for things safely on the internet, what if it seems too good to be true scenarios, watching out for emails that come from your friends, because that's how guys slip things in, is you get an email from your good friend Mary Jane, and Mary Jane never sent that email to you. More on downloaded software, needing to install extensions in order to look at coupons. And it's like you can't just get this coupon from Meyer. You have to install this thing first in order to download it. We'll talk about that if people are interested. And just a few other topics here. Social engineering, how seniors are mostly targeted and why it's so important for seniors to be educated, whether you've been hacked or not. I'll leave with one last thing on here just because it's so critically important, and this isn't my notes of things here. I also would like to talk about something called Bitwarden. Have I been pwned? Well, I'll just pull that one up because it's important. Have I been... This site right here is a good guy. Information that gets hacked and stolen typically isn't coming from your computer. Instead, it's coming from a website that got hacked. And you see down here a list of websites that have been hacked. And if you have an account that's on one of those websites, then maybe your information is compromised. So, for example, if I put in my info in here and do a search, oh no, pwned. So, let's see here. These are the different sites that had information about me, and you may not even know what they are because remember I told you when you sign up for things, they sell that information to other sources. LinkedIn, most people know that one. Ticketfly, I don't know where a lot of these come from, but my information, you see it says compromised data, email addresses and passwords, compromised information, etc. So this website, it's good for you to go there, plug in your information, and it'll tell you whether you've been pwned or not. And if you have, what happens is, the reason for this site is if you have on LinkedIn your password was compromised, the bad guys know that you use the same username and password on every other website, which is why you need to have a unique password for every single website so that you stay safe. You can't use the same username and password like I know you are doing. I know you're doing it. So you need to have a unique password. And using a program like Bitwarden, you can actually do it, and you just have to remember a master password, and you don't have to remember the passwords for every single website. But we're out of time for today, and so thank you for joining us on our very first live class. We tried to do one earlier today, but the audio quality was terrible, and so thank you for joining us here later. If you're watching it later, we're going to do these every day the week of April 7th, 8th, every day this week, starting at 4 o'clock, because in the survey, that's when everybody wanted to do it. We just had a flicker here because there's a storm going on. Thankfully, I have UPSs, so we didn't lose anything. But until next time, have a good one. By the way, www.pccomputerguy.com, and our phone number is 317-883-7224.
get you.